Mike has a podcast which is very, very good. Listen to Mike's podcast, you definitely should. Learn things you didn't know about your favorite TV show. Well, film really. Like there's a director's cut of The Little Shop of Horrors. I didn't actually know that. And it was the only version I'd ever seen on TV years ago. Anyway, listen to Mike's podcast or I'll kick in your door. Swing it wide open and knock you on the floor. Never seen what, you've never seen what, you've never seen what, you've never seen what, well now you have.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of You've Never Seen What, a podcast where I, Michael Moran, watch a film that I've never seen before based on the recommendation of my guest. This week's guest is Jeff Bakalar, co-owner of the video games website Giant Bomb. Jeff has had a storied career in tech and entertainment media, most prominently with CNET, where he founded and co-hosted the long-running 404 Show podcast. I first came across Jeff's work when he became part of the Giant Beast cast, the East Coast spin-off of the Giant Bomb cast, and watched as he slowly ditched microwaves and fridges at CES to join Giant Bomb proper. I nearly got it out properly. Last year or so, Jeff and his colleagues buy Giant Bomb from its previous owners to become fully independent, and also saw the release of Jeff's webcomic series, What Lies Below the Lilies. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks so much for having me. I can call you Mike, right?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
We're buddies. We've been talking for 15 minutes now. We're basically best friends.
We go all the way back to 11 a.m. Eastern time, my friend. Thanks for having me. This is I love the idea of the show. This is awesome. It's a lot of fun. Gives me an excuse to talk about one of my favorite things in general. So thanks for having me.
Cool. How has your 2026 been so far? This is something I've asked every guest, and most of my guests have been American, and the answers have not been good, but I'm still going to ask it.
Well, Mike, I live in a bubble. I live in the cozy bubble of New York City where nothing bad ever happens. No, it's my house of 2026 has been okay. It's been good. You know, I think that's always such a loaded question, like you said, especially for people here in the States. If we are to sort of delude ourselves and kind of just answer that question in a vacuum, I will say so far so good. If we are outside of that vacuum, just constant agony and pain 24/7. So choose which answer you prefer there.
I'm in the agony and pain answer always.
Of course.
Yeah, I said to someone else, but I started this, like my first guest was from the States, and it was in the midst of ICE's terrible, like the big stories of ICE in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So yeah, very loaded question in 2026. The world is falling to shit. So why not talk about a film from 30 years ago on a podcast instead?
That's a good idea.
That presents a very different vision of New York and the New York area. So, Jeff, I am a massive fan of Giant Bomb, which is one of the main reasons I've asked you onto the show. Apart from, of course, wanting to hear your opinions about hackers. Next month marks 1 year anniversary since becoming independent, the media buyout from Fandom. The management buyout from Fandom. What has the last year been like? I imagine very stressful, but rewarding as well.
Yeah, certainly stressful. I think there's been a lot that I've been sort of forced to learn very quickly. Definitely for the better. I think before we bought the business, I had been, I don't want to say forced, but I had certainly been kind of like angled into a certain direction with the Giant Bomb brand, with the GameSpot brand, where I kind of had to learn a lot about running businesses within corporate sort of oversight. And I think the kind of irony there is that all of that practice really prepared me to tackle what was before us in taking ownership of this business, because there was a lot that like I said, we had to learn super quick and kind of hit the ground running. And, I do think I was sort of prepared in a kind of surprising way to to tackle some of that stuff. Again, I am by no means the average CEO guy, but I've been able to LARP as a CEO as well as I think anyone in given the situation. So yeah, it's been a year almost, and we are definitely moving in the right direction. And obviously that is almost completely at the thanks and gratitude to all the people who support us. So I think in 2026, I think corporate media, corporate games media is incredibly difficult and challenging. And I do think, we kind of had a situation where we, a little bit of luck, a little bit of right timing, right place, and we're able to kind of take it independent. And I do think that is for now, because everything changes so quickly. But I will
Yeah, of
say for
course.
now, it does feel like the most viable position to be in, where you are supported by the people who want to see you make the things, where you don't have any kind of oversight, and you really just answer to yourself and you answer to your community. And I think that's been a really solid position for Giant Bomb to be in. And look, and that's the legacy of that business as well, right? So I think bringing it back and kind of having it be this independent thing again has really sort of set it up for success. And like I said, we're still learning a lot about how to make this work. But I will say, things are certainly feeling good and going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, for me, speaking as a fan of the site, this when shit seems to be hitting the fan this time last year, I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, and obviously just as a fan, not as anyone who would be affected career wise or anything, which must have been even more worrying. I was like, oh no, it's one up again. It's like the death of something that I love, and I was heartbroken. But to see that kind of turn around was like such a feel good story in a otherwise pretty terrible year for the industry, both the journalism side or the media side and the development side. I mean, I know many people who've lost their jobs through layoffs and things like that
Yeah.
in the industry. It's just everyone's bowing down to the devil of AI, and and also paying out failed bets from post COVID. So yeah, from my perspective, I was like went from utter heartache to being overjoyed, and I hope so much that the community continues to support, and it remains viable as an independent business, because Giant Bomb is like such an icon, I think, of video game websites. Like, it's never been the biggest, it's probably never been the most profitable, but I think it has one of the biggest footprints in the video game media industry. um I joined Giant Bomb like the day registrations opened. So when was that? That was 18 years ago. So that was like a
Wow.
whole
Oh my
lifetime ago.
gosh.
So like I've even got I nearly wore for this, Jeff. I have a Whiskey Media shirt that I got when I was, I think, 20
Oh my God.
or 19, and I've lost a lot of weight over the last year, so it fits me again. So I nearly wore it, but then I thought Jeff wasn't from the whiskey era. He won't appreciate
No,
that. He's
no,
the new. You're Saved by the Bell, the new class, but parentheses positive.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that brings up like a good point, right? I think, like, obviously the cast has certainly changed a lot, and whether it's new and familiar faces kind of coming through the revolving door, it is this kind of institution, right? And I do think that's what kind of carries the legacy and makes it so special, and being a part of that it feels great, and to be able to like carry the banner, right? It's pretty great that we have kind of landed on our feet despite all the kind of acquisitional trauma that the business has sort of endured over almost 20 years. Yeah, it's awesome. I couldn't have said it better myself.
One of the things that I find myself doing is like there's people who very much view Giant Bomb as being the previous people that were there, and I get that because it's such a personality-driven website. And I'm being completely honest, not blowing smoke at all. This current lineup, this current run of shows, and everything like that is the most engaged I've been with Giant Bomb content in years.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, that is a little bit gushing. So apologies, but it's true. I mean, it is still the podcast. The Bombcast is still the podcast that I listen to as soon as it comes out. I listen to lots of podcasts. I consume a lot of content online, but it is still like the one that I go to straight away.
Oh, that means so much. Appreciate you saying that. Yeah, it feels good to hear that. I think you know, it certainly makes us. I think the spot we're in, right? Like I think it's coming through, right, in the content that it's sort of like the agency is there, right, and there really are no kind of shackles, in any aspect, right? Of course within reason, but like, yeah, to hear that, it feels really good. Appreciate it.
So, prior to joining Giant Bomb, you were the CNET guy, as often mocked on the Beastcast.
I've never heard anyone mock that part of my career ever, Mike. You'd be the first, so let's hear what you got.
What I wanted to ask you is,
Yeah.
like, how much do you keep an eye on the since leaving that position? How much do you keep an eye on the tech landscape and CES was a couple of months ago now.
Yeah.
Is that something where you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm not involved in that? Or do you miss it? Do you miss going to Vegas and seeing all this mad stuff?
Well, I definitely don't miss going to Vegas. I've done the math before. It's some obscene amount of time of my life that I've spent in Vegas as a consequence of going to CES, 12, 13 times. I think the enshittification of the tech world through AI and stuff we don't need has waned my personal interest about paying attention to CES. I'm still very much into technology, into TVs and cameras and computers. Like I care about that stuff. I'm plugged into that. I think it has become sort of the CES in particular has just become this kind of carnival circus that doesn't really move the needle in a way that brands can kind of make their own splash throughout the year and just sort of control the messaging. So I kind of take CES obviously, as everyone really should, with a gigantic grain of salt. And that's kind of it. But yeah, like I got into working at CNET because I was so kind of tech informed and enthusiastic about it. And that has not really waned. I do think, I think like certain things have kind of hit a bit of a plateau, specifically like phones, even TVs, right? Where like, they're all awesome, like even cameras, right? Like, there's going to be these iterative sort of improvements. And it's like, yeah, every now and then a camera comes along. You're like, well, okay, this is the one that's actually doing all the things. But like phones, I mean, every phone is amazing. Every phone takes amazing photos and does all the things. And it's like, do you really need to spend a month researching to find the phone that's for you? The answer for 99% of the people is no, you don't. And I would argue the same is for TVs. You have to, it's really hard to make the splash now to come to market with like some genuinely novel product that is actually getting people's attention. It's not there, those happen maybe like 2 to 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Like and not to go on a total rant with this, but it's like the thing that I always noticed right away when I started at CNET was like everything was disappointing me, right? Like everything was like promising one thing and then under delivering, right? And obviously it's no secret I'm a gigantic hockey fan. I'm like watching hockey last night. The playoffs are on, and I'm watching it on YouTube TV, and I'm just like, this looks like shit. This looks like absolute shit. I have a 4K TV. We all have all of these things that we've like paid out of pocket for that are like expensive and can do so much, and the infrastructure isn't there. So I have to watch playoff hockey in 2026 in 720p, like some sort of cave person. And I just think we are sold this bill of goods. We're sold this sort of thing, this promise, but we're not like being met to like what we have. And that I find, and that has like been the case since I've been interested in technology. It's always this like over promise, under deliver kind of thing. And that is what's kept me ornery. That is what's kept me hostile for so many decades, you know?
I mean, I completely agree in terms of like things have plateaued because everything's at a baseline of decent. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just that nothing's exciting. Like you mentioned the phones. I mean, my dad, who is not very good at technology, he recently got a new Samsung something. It's not one of the flagships. It's like one of the £200 or $200 phones that you'd
Yeah.
get cheap. And as I was helping him set it up, I was like, my phone's better than this. Don't get me wrong; it's definitely faster. The screen's a little bit better, but this is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
like for 90% of people, this is enough, and
Totally.
and same with TVs. Like I feel like we've not had that big leap in a while, and I don't know where that big leap is going to come from, or if it will come. I mean, obviously, it'll be something that we probably don't know about yet. But when I'm listening to Devendra Hardawar from Engadget on the podcast talking about micro RGB TVs, and there was a apparently very impressive TV at CES this year, which was truly flat, like an OLED that has no
Paper thin kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's he said it's as thick as a pencil and goes on the wall and everything. Like everything's wireless to it. Obviously, there's just a power cord, that's it. But all your HDMI and everything is in a box
Right.
somewhere else that's wireless. And yeah, that might be like something that we would have seen and thought, oh, that's the future in a film like Hackers. But it's not really that mind blowing. Like I don't know where we go from here in terms of like, okay, 8K. 3D was it came and went. It's kind of like it's similar in the video games industry as well, where we've kind of almost plateaued. And generally, I'd always be excited at the kind of starting the inkling of rumors of like a new consoles, which we're getting now. But the industry is in such a state, both in terms of like we talked about before, layoffs and things like that, but also in terms of prices going through the roof for components and component shortages, that it just doesn't feel like it feels like 5 minutes ago the PlayStation 5 came out. But,
I know.
But it's been 6 years almost. So yeah, it's just everything's kind of like stalled a little bit almost.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it feels like anyway.
No, for sure. Like, I think you're exactly right. I think like for the longest time, there was, at least when we didn't have like global supply chain shortages and all of these like unforeseen variables that have just played hell with like the entire global economy. There was at least this like wonder and promise, right? Of like, oh, something will happen, something will impress. And now it's like, oh, it's the disappointment of those realities coming to prove that they are more sort of smoke and mirrors than anything else, overlaid with like just living on Earth in 2026, right? So it's just like pick your poison. It's kind of rough from all ends.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of companies are obviously, I don't want to get too much or really get into AI at all, but that's their bet for the next big technology. And and I feel like I will say though, as much as online in our kind of crafted chambers that we're in, like, yeah, fuck AI. Everyone says it, I say it, blah, blah, blah. The amount of people I know that use ChatGPT daily who aren't very tech savvy is both surprising and worrying. Like, I was speaking to someone yesterday who was getting it to format all sorts of stuff for them for like a medical claim, and I'm like, oh, like, okay, maybe a little bit of help, fine, but don't trust this stuff. I'm like pleading with people not to trust it. And then the examples they often give me, it turns out it was right, and I'm like, a broken clock's right twice a day. And most of the stuff is right, but it's like when you just fully give yourself over to it, it's not the right avenue at all. Should very much be taken with a pinch of salt.
For sure.
What is your thought on a trend that I've noticed recently of people either returning to older technology or getting very specific single-use technology? So, for example, I notice a lot of people using digital audio players again instead of using Apple Music or Spotify on their phones.
Right.
Not a lot of people in our kind of like the tech circles online, but I have noticed that trend. I'm wondering if that's something that has appealed to you at all or anything like that.
Well, I guess, I can try the way I would explain it. I mean, I for me personally, I don't think I've been compelled to go in that direction, but I understand it and I can explain it, or at least give you my opinion. I think it's all about just agency, right? I think everything is now served up to us in a way that it used to be more our agency of seeking out the thing, right? So, your music streaming service is going to suggest things for you as opposed to you saying, no, 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 like,
Yeah.
I just want to listen to this band. Don't do anything else. And I think that's where like the sort of single use service or usage devices come in, where people just want that control back. I think, I think, similar with what you were talking about with ChatGPT, it's this like cognitive offload, right? So people are just sort of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like something else could think for me? And whether or not they're like actually declaring that kind of remains to be seen, but they're certainly picking it up in a more sort of complimentary way, right? So I think part of I think it's like nostalgia for sure, but also the idea of like, hey, I want to take back some of my like hobby ambition, and not have an algorithm kind of dictate what I should be seeing. I think you go back, we'll probably be able to point the finger at the time where like Instagram went from chronological to not, and it just kind
Yeah.
of like will serve you anything now. And I think that will wind up being a bit of like a fork in the road, where we sort of just like lost the choice. We sacrificed it almost overnight, and we're just like, yeah, screw it, I don't care, I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's all related.
I mean, I guess in a way, it's kind of like one of the reasons I want to do this podcast as well. I'm filling in my backlog, but
Yeah.
I'm getting a curated list of films to watch from people who can kind
That's
of
right.
vouch for them, as opposed to going on Netflix. I when I load up Netflix, I spend more time flicking through films and going, no, don't really feel like that, than actually watching films.
Sure.
So I've kind of found myself kind of going back to this. I mean, it's only recently, since I started doing this podcast, that I started trying to build up a bit more of a physical library again, which I have here behind me of like the films that people are recommending to me, but also, oh, I love that film. I've not seen it in a while. Let's buy it and physically have it with a nice artwork and in the best possible quality. That's not going to be updated with a new version that James Cameron wants to remove all the wrinkles from everyone's faces in my iTunes library. It is like a
Sure.
physical thing that has some permanence as well. So yeah, I definitely get that. So you're not one of these people that would is gonna buy the tiny mini e-reader or buy an AYN Thor handheld or anything like that.
I have a Thor. I get these things and then I just wind up not using them, and that's just like a fault of like, I
I'm
think,
very much do that as well.
yeah, like like I'll bring it with me, and maybe I will turn it on and I'll like get, but again, I for me it's more the tinkering that I enjoy than maybe the
100%.
actual like, oh,
Yes.
I need to go back and play Beautiful Joe for the 80th time. It's like, no. Yeah, so I do appreciate, like, I have a pretty substantial Plex library that is like backed up. That's mine. It's all the stuff that I've owned, and I've backed that up, and that's kind of like my quote unquote, physical to digital kind of conversion that I've done. I'm not interested in keeping physical media. That's just a thing that I've not really kind of like gotten into, especially if I have like digital backups,
Yeah.
redundant backups, and local backups. I feel good about that. But yeah,
That
that's kind of how I play it.
that tinkering thing is very much what I do. I mean, I've got the AYN Thor here too, I think. Yeah, I've got this. Got it here right in front of me.
Yeah,
At the amount of time I've just like, oh, let's see what can I do with this?
exactly.
What front end can I load onto this? Which game's going to load onto it and put in a nice folder structure? Oh god, my camera is focusing weirdly. But to be honest, I also do that with the digital audio side of things. It's about, oh, I've got my CD, I'm going to rip it, I'm going to get it formatted the right way, have my library built up, and it is just a tinkering thing. I don't know if it's just like quite relaxing to do that as opposed to
Yeah,
searching.
I think it's meditative, right?
Yeah.
I think it's that's it. That's the itch that it scratches for me for sure.
So you're not a physical media guy when it comes to films, apart from maybe Hackers.
Yeah, I'll make an exception.
What are you someone who goes to the cinema very often or the theater very often?
I probably go maybe like 5 times a year. The vast majority of the content I consume is at home. I've my primary watching platforms are Twitch and YouTube. I probably like I come in a little like under in terms of like where I'm probably where like the typical elder millennials attention span is. I probably average a little under my age in terms of my media consumption. But yeah, I feel like there's very few instances where I need to go to the theater and see the thing. I think that entire roadmap for like release schedules has just allowed us to kind of make our own schedule, right? So
yeah, it is.
very infrequently.
It's gotten so short the
Yeah.
path from theater to on demand and then on streaming.
Totally.
But I still love going to the cinema when I can. I did go the other day and have it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be at the start, but I had a row of people talking constantly, and then I was like, I go quite often to the cinema, and I'm okay, and I get my free tickets from my TV provider, and I try and optimize the cost. But if you had come and you were spending full price for tickets and popcorn and all this, and spent a load of money just to have people constantly on their phones and talking, like, it is very stressful when that starts to happen.
Yes, I understand. That's part of the for me, it's like part of the reason I'm not the one racing over there. I think it's like a cultural shift, right? Like, I think it's just, and maybe that is like the older school thing about me, where it's like I would much rather sacrifice the week or two I have to, or month or two I have to wait to see this thing in my home, than having to go and deal with normal people.
Normies.
Normies, God forbid.
So, that being said, what stuff have you watched recently at the theater or at home? Has there been any interesting TV shows or films that you've watched recently?
I just saw the Mario movie. I thought that was fine. I got exactly what I wanted out of it. It was mostly for my kid. I've not been on a movie kick lately. My wife and I usually make our way through TV. We just finished, or we're just about to finish the second season of a show called English Teacher that was on FX,
Right.
that we really dug. We also, we also really like YouTube series. We love watching like YouTube essays. We love watching. I mean, there's Abby Russell and I talk about this channel all the time, but there's this channel called Scout Outdoors, and it's about this dude who is from Newfoundland, Canada, and he like went to this island and renovated this abandoned shack, and he's been uploading a video once a week for over a year. He brought his wife out there, and they're like having a kid, and like just I guess it, it's funny, like, it is reality TV, right? It's just like a more evolved form of it. But in the case of like, it is real, like, it's just so much more real and rough, right? Like, where traditional syndicated reality TV, right, is just like, obviously there's story editors and there's people who are like putting people into wild, situations to make for engaging television. But I think what YouTube and all that stuff has done is really allowed for like the real reality of things to be a thing. Now, obviously, there's plenty of channels that have adopted the same nuances of the 2000s yesteryear reality conventions, but there's a lot out there now that is just so genuine and so kind of authentic. So that's what we watch a lot more YouTube than I think probably most couples in their in their early 40s or mid 40s.
I'm just looking at this channel now, Scout Outdoors. and they're long episodes as well. They're like 30, 40 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Like,
They and I don't know how they do it, because they are really off the grid. They've got a lot of manual labor, and they're still finding a way to like upload a video and edit a video once a week. So it seems like a lot. There's a whole, we don't have to unpack that channel. There's like a lot of weird kind of stuff going on too, but there's this rubbernecking kind of, maybe it's even a guilty pleasure. But
I might have to check it out or something like that, because it's something like I have a partner, Jenna, and we live together. We've got a daughter. So when our 2-year-old's in bed, which is a lot later than a 2-year-old probably should be up, we end up watching just the same stuff, like mindless stuff over and over again, as opposed to, we don't even really sit and consume a lot of, box sets or whatever people say, like the TV series that everyone's talking about for the watercolor moments or anything like that. It's stuff like British soap operas, which are very different, I must say, before you assume anything, to American soap operas.
I get it. No, I get it. I've heard of that. Yeah.
And stuff like there's a show on right now called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I think they did try and do a US version of this at one point. But what it is they get 10 or 12 celebrities, and they're never huge name celebrities. They'll get like 1 or 2 names that are a bit more, prominent, and then the rest are. A trend I find funny in reality TV is you'll have celebrity versions of shows where the cast is someone famous for being on a reality show. It's like a snake eating its own tail sort of thing.
100%.
But we're watching that right now, and it is dumb and crap, really. But it's something compelling about it, especially because the concept of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is that you take these 10, 12 celebrities, you put them in the middle of a jungle, and they have challenges to earn stars, which will give them a meal for that day, but they've got to prepare it and cook it themselves. And they're outside in the elements. Like, it's not Survivor. It's not like that. Like, there are some, but it's not like a case of when the cameras go off, they're off to a hotel. Like, they are literally there. And like,
Right.
some of them will like lose like 50 pounds in the time that they're on the show. Or I think one of them lost 3 stones, so that's about 45 pounds. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because it's on for like 3 weeks. So we're watching that right now, and that's quite good. But it is that rubbernecking, because it's like there's a bit of a thing going where one of the people on it, who is David Haye, who's a former world heavyweight champion boxer, he's basically being a bully to another guy, like just outwardly a bully. And because they are isolated in there, there's like no one saying, "Oh, maybe stop that, David." You're not looking good. It is kind of letting people reveal themselves for who they are in a way. So yeah, as much as reality TV is in some ways the death of television, I get it. I get it to some extent.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that whenever I've consumed, I do think there is a very different style between US and UK reality TV shows. So I always think of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. That started on British TV. And if you were to watch a British episode of that compared to the American one, it is like whiplash. It is crazy how different it is. Because
he's more mean on this one, right?
Well, it's not that he's more mean. It's that they recount everything every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of scenes that are probably refilmed. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels, like you say, scripted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like a thing with, I think, a lot of US television, where I think maybe because there's a lot more commercial breaks, there's a lot more ad breaks, they'll like recap everything every 2 minutes, and it's like lots of background music and a lot very quick cuts and quick editing, whereas the British sensibilities are probably a bit slower. Let's say.
I mean, that's what I like yearn for. I feel like I like, the classic, like the British baking show, right? Like, they're more normal. They're just more normal.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Is the right word. More boring.
Yeah, but I think it's a pace that is like more in sync with how people should be, right? Like, I look. I'm not speaking from any position of like American reality TV authority, but when I am exposed to it, I'm sort of just like, I feel like I'm going to have a seizure. Like, it is just so frenetic and insane that it's just like I just find it deeply unappealing. Whereas, like you said, it's from what I've seen, there's a bit better pacing in stuff from the UK.
I do think that it is the globalization, the kind of homogenization of culture through the lens of America has started to taint some of it, though. Like, we have our version of The Masked Singer now in the UK, well, for the last few years, and that feels like an American show to me in the way that the British version is done. And I remember someone said something about it the other day, and I was like, there would be an enjoyable show there if you were to edit out 90% of it and just have the songs and the reveals.
American reality TV is obsessed with keeping people completely on the edge of their seat for as long as possible, drawing out every piece of drama. You know, everything's a freaking cliffhanger. It's just like, that's no way to live, you know? Like, it's no way to consume media. It's insane.
So apart from the Mario Galaxy movie, which I haven't yet watched, I'm not gonna lie, doesn't. I mean, I watched the first one and I thought, it's not for me. I'm not a child.
No,
you know what I mean?
they're bad. They're bad movies on their
But even
face,
in that, yeah, because like, you know, I think sometimes that's used as an excuse. But like the Sonic movie, I thought was okay. Like, you know, and that's, you know, I certainly think it was better than the Mario movie, and it felt a little bit more like the creators kind of trusted the audience a little bit more.
The one thing that we've learned is that Nintendo and Illumination have no desire to send or tell any other story or get any kind of like emotional output with these movies. It is just the sugar, popcorn, and rainbows kind of like nostalgia hit. Give us your money, go home. You know, that's it. We're not learning any lessons. That's for sure.
There's a class of blockbuster movie these days, which is just that Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen gif. I think the Marvel films have fallen massively into that trap over the last few years.
Totally.
And I'm not particularly looking forward to Doomsday for that same. I mean, I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be probably a shit show, but it'll be a spectacle. So I'm looking forward to it from that side. But I'm one of those people that thought, have you seen Deadpool and Wolverine?
I've seen all the Deadpools except that one.
A lot of people love it, and the people who love it, I kind of look at them and think, what do you love about this?
Yeah.
Like the first two Deadpools, they're fine. They're not amazing. The third one is just, let's see how many cameos we can get in. Let's see how many meme-worthy things we can have in here. You know, it's just that pointing at the screen. I recognize that. I understand that reference. And it feels to me a little bit like the Mario movie was a bit like that, especially as they started revealing all the extra characters and things like that were going to be in it, and little references to games, which is cool, but it's cool once.
It's fun. I do think all content now, there's a lot of mainstream content now that has to be more than just what it is. It has to be like a scavenger hunt. It has to make sense for like short form media and social media. And it just has to be it has to wear so many more hats than just the film that you go and see. It has to have this universe and economy around it. And, you know, I guess after a while that shit goes stale and people see through it and it sucks.
Yeah.
And that's just what we're inundated with, you know, in the last 10 years. It sucks. There's no other way to do it. That's why you got to support independent media.
Yes, definitely. Okay, I think we'll just take a very quick break and get into our discussion of hackers. Unless there's anything else that you've been watching that you want to highlight.
No, I feel bad. You know, my nights when my kid goes to bed are really just for me and kind of playing games, unless there's some, you know, serialized TV show that my wife and I are trying to blow through. But yeah, it's mostly just trying to just touch as many games as I can. Hard to do. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer, but no, that's kind of it now.
I have got a recommendation actually based on what I've been watching recently. So there's a British. I mean, I don't know what kind of TV shows you might be into, but there's most British, like the British equivalent of Prestige, like HBO television or whatever.
Yeah.
Seems to be cop shows. In all honesty,
Okay.
there's so many cop shows. There's one that I'm really enjoying right now. That is it's in its third series, but it's taken like 8 years to get those 3 series out. And it's called The Capture.
Okay. I'm writing it down.
And it is about essentially a technology. It's kind of prescient, really, when it came out because it came out before this wave of AI and stuff. But a technology which is able to, in real time, amend footage to show something else. So the first series stars Callum Turner, who is one of the favourites to be the next James Bond now, actually. And he's a soldier who's been accused of something that he hasn't done, but the CCTV footage is showing him do it, which is like attacking someone on a bus. And so it's kind of about like the special, like the counterterrorism police who are all into like espionage and stuff, trying to figure out what's going on and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But he's very, very good. It's just the right side of ridiculous. So there are things that happen in it that you go, oh, okay, that would never happen. But it's that kind of compelling little breadcrumb at the end of each episode of I want to see what happens next. Sure, and also the cast is great. It's I think her name is Holiday Granger is the lead character, but also Ron Perlman's in it. Right on. He plays a CIA agent. And yeah, I'd recommend that because I haven't really been hooked into one of these kind of shows for a while. And this third series, which is on now, and because it's British, there's only like 6 episodes every season. I'd recommend that one. That's a good one to seek out, I think. That's one of the things I've been watching.
Well, thanks for the rec. This is it.
Jeff has chosen for me to watch Hackers, the 1995 cult classic at this point, thriller from director Ian Softly. I'll read the IMDb synopsis. These IMDb synopsises, by the way, are often the most... like they feel almost AI generated sometimes.
Do they? Are they just like a product of their time?
Well, this one's okay, but I watched Cabaret for Suze Kempner a few weeks ago, and the synopsis of that was like, "What are you talking? This is like bears little resemblance to the film." But anyway, the synopsis is: teenage hackers discover a criminal conspiracy with plans to use a computer virus that will capsize 5 oil tankers. So that's perfect. Synopsis. I mean, yeah, it sums it up, I guess. So like I said, this film came out in 1995, directed by Ian Softly, who isn't a director who I know a lot about, to be honest. He's directed a few films, but I think Hackers was his second kind of big, more Hollywood-style film. It stars Johnny Lee Miller, British actor, Angelina Jolie in one of her very early roles. She's incredibly young in this film. Fisher Stevens, Lorraine Bracco. Quite a good cast of characters in there. So Hackers, why, first of all, Jeff, did you pick this film for me to watch?
I think Hackers is such a amazing piece of like 90s nostalgia. It is such a time capsule. And I think personally speaking, I don't know if I've seen a movie more times than I've seen Hackers. I think for whatever reason, this film speaks to me and still does to this day, speaks to me in a way that I just am completely just melt. I just completely like melt in a puddle over it. I think it does so many things that I think are so interesting for its time. And, I don't know if there's a movie that kind of like better summarizes what teenagers in the mid 90s wanted their hobby to be presented like. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's a better example of it really anywhere that kind of makes you feel, or like the thing that was just starting out, right? Like being interested in computers and the internet and like what's possible and skirting the line of like gray area legalities and whatnot. I don't think there's anything else out there at the time that even scraped the surface of like that scene.
Yeah.
And like even I think you could even make the argument that it's a little ahead of its time, because even in the mid 90s, like being online for any extended amount of time was not the main sort of like, way to kind of behave, right? I think this was still considered a fad and a kind of like a deviant hobby to be a part of. And I just think it, and as ridiculous, right, and way way over the top this movie is, and the things it portrays is, I think there's enough, granular sort of like doses of like, or at least like references to reality, right? That serve people of that time well enough to kind
Yeah.
of keep it in this sort of, spotlight. I also think it's I know you're talking about the New York part of it. I think it's a really underrated New York movie. I
Right.
think it does a really interesting job of capturing, I know they shot it, a lot of it in New York. And I just think it captures the city in a really interesting way that, someone who grew up going there all the time, worked there for many, many, many years, lived around it my entire life. It just kind of feels like home in an interesting kind of way too.
Yeah, I think now, before I went into watching this, I'd obviously heard of the film before, and
Yeah.
I kind of had very low hopes, or very not much hope in terms of how it was going to represent technology and computers. And he actually did a lot better job than I thought. I mean, there are some
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous stuff in it.
of
Don't get me wrong,
course.
but this is
Of
like the
course.
same year as like Johnny Mnemonic, or like we had that kind of early '90s Lawnmower Man. Like,
Yeah.
internet was just starting to become a thing, and virtual reality was like a big concept at the time and stuff like that. And although it does skirt those lines a little bit, it's reasonably accurate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
simplistic, but it's reasonably accurate.
It's
Um,
it has some like lucid elements of it that you're
yeah.
sort of like, oh, okay, like this. Oh, everything is completely insane and over the top, but it's weirdly grounded, right? Like it's weirdly kind of grounded.
I think that the more like the less grounded parts of it are actually the stuff outside of the computers, like this
Right,
weird
right, right.
I mean, look, I'm British. I don't know what the American high school experience is like outside of the stupid glossy things that I've seen from like Saved by the Bell and stuff like that in the
Right.
'90s. So I don't actually know what it's like. But it seemed to me like, this is a particularly interesting world that these ostensibly kids occupy, with lots of neon, lots of crazy clothing and crazy hairstyles, and kind of almost a little bit cyberpunky in a way,
Yeah.
but still, very mid-90s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, look, like where I went to school, obviously the way high school is portrayed in Hackers was not my experience, but being the in close proximity to Manhattan, it certainly takes plenty of liberties with just like the freedom and creative expression that these kids seem to like possess. And I do think there is a kind of like fun alternate reality, but I do think it does do a good job of kind of portraying the alternative independence and kind of like lifestyle that New York City teens kind of were projected as and presented as, even to people like me who grew up in the suburbs, where it was like, oh, you go to school in New York City, that must be like so, culturally profound and kind of like amazing. And I think, interestingly enough, there is this like, it does kind of thread the needle of like, wow, if you go to school in Manhattan, you must be just like an adult already, right? Like, and I do think, as silly and as kind of like on its face, unbelievable it is, I do think it does a fun and interesting job of like demonstrating that kind of disparity.
Yeah. I think that, like, from my perspective, like, so I grew up in Ireland, actually.
Mhm.
And like, so my school, I know this is a slight tangent, but like, I went to a school where the entire school had about 100 people in it.
Yeah,
The entire school, not like my year or my class or whatever.
right. The whole thing.
And I would have classmates at the age of 14, 13, driving into school
Really?
themselves on tractors
Okay.
and parking next to the teachers. But at the same time, it felt like it didn't. There almost wasn't a distinction. Like, you were in school, you weren't in high school. You were in the same school from the age of 13 to 18. So I don't know what it is in America, but you wore uniform. You know, you until your last year of school, you weren't allowed to venture into the town on your lunch break. You were like,
Gotcha.
you were like in school. And so like they kind of. I think that is probably a thing, probably for people in my generation as well, with the stuff we grew up with. Like, that kind of American high school concept always was kind of a bit like a thing that I think we would have wanted. You know,
Yeah.
like, even like, we didn't have lockers even. Like, you know, even the idea of like a hallway with lockers, and it's like, oh, you know, I'm going to put my stuff in my locker. Like stuff like that was like a foreign concept to us growing up.
Yeah. I mean,
this is like a level beyond that, I think.
yes, and I think from where your experience from what your experience taught you to what you are seeing in Hackers is obviously like the wildest end of the spectrum. But I do think, at least in my experience, the American high school experience is a bit more loosey goosey, and is a bit more kind of free range, if you will, for lack of a better way to describe it. And then I think the reality portrayed in Hackers is just like, don't forget, like, Hackers is also, it's kind of an alternate history or an alternate present, right? Because it sort of it assumes a world that is like a little bit more technologically savvy than it was in the mid 90s. And I think Hackers 1995 in New York City 1995 is just, it is a bit kind of like a side loaded vision of New York, right? For sure.
Yeah. So we begin the film with the character of Dade as a child, who would later in the film be played by Johnny Lee Miller, but we discovered that he causes a crazy hack where 1,507 computers go offline, which I love. That kind of really dates it in a way, but he's banned from using a computer for 7 years. And then we kind of see him. It feels to me like there's another cut of this movie somewhere. Some of the things, like watching it with fresh eyes, like at first time, there's a few scenes, particularly around like dream sequences and stuff like that, that kind of clash together in a very strange way. But we kind of find out that his mother has had to move for work into New York, so he's actually annoyed that he's now in Manhattan, which seems like a bit of crazy. Like, I'd imagine you'd be like, "Wow, I'm in like one of the biggest cities in the world all of a sudden," but he didn't seem very happy with that.
He's mad from the get-go, right? Like, and obviously he's sentenced and put on probation, but yes, on the plane ride in, he is just pissed, right? Like, he's looking down in Manhattan and he can only see motherboards, right? Like, and it just is, it on its face, it's silly, right? It's like, dude, you got maybe he's upset about his parents' separation. I don't know what it is, but like, he does, he seemingly has this like new lease on life. He's about to turn 18 and his probation be lifted, but he's like mad that he's moving to Manhattan. And it's like, buddy, you're going to, I'm biased, but you're going to the best city in the world, man. Like, what's the problem here? You're 18. But look, kids are weird. Teenagers are weird.
He's left his friends and stuff. It's a bit like the start of Inside Out, actually, in that way.
Yeah,
like,
look, there's trauma there. There's a lot of friction. There's hardship there. I get it. Those are real problems.
I actually moved countries at the age of 17. Moved from the middle of nowhere to a city, so on my own as well, because I moved to the UK for university, so I kind of had a similar thing. But I was more like excited about, I mean, I live in a small city now, it's called Preston. You'll have never heard of it. It's in the north of England, but compared to where I lived in Ireland, it is like, there's more people in this city than there is in the entire county by like a factor of 5 or something like that. Like, it's ludicrous. As soon as he turns 18, he starts using a computer connected to the phone line to hack a local TV station. And this is where we start to think, see a kind of interesting thing that the film does in terms of how do you make hacking exciting or visually represented?
Right.
So they do a few different things. One of them is a little bit weird to me, which is like a montage of scenes from other videos and other films and stuff, kind of indicating the kind of push back and forth between him and this other hacker, Acid Burn, who we later is revealed to be Angelina Jolie. But there's even a very physical representation where we see this kind of like robotic arm pushing a videotape back and forth in the TV station. And I thought, yeah, they must, thinking about it, like, I mean, it is difficult to make this kind of thing exciting or visually represented without going down the crazy kind of Johnny Mnemonic route or anything like that. I'm trying to remember what Sandra Bullock's The Net did, because I can't really remember much about that film.
I really like that one too. That's funny. Yeah, The Net is more boring. Like that's what it is, because and that's what you're getting at, right? What you're describing, and you're really hitting the nail on the head, is like the challenge that I assume they had with this movie is, how do we make hacking actually cool and visually interesting, when in reality it's just a bunch of like terminal prompts, right? And you're just sort of like, you're not sweating, you're not moving around, you're not wearing sunglasses while you're in front of the computer. Like, it's just not that cool. It's not sexy.
Yeah.
So I think what you brought up is like, it's interesting, right? Like, they chose to use all of this like extracurricular graphical kind of like, assistance and these like these like things that represent other items that are obviously not real, and no one in 1995 could have had an internet connection that would have fed that kind of fidelity, right? And it's just very weird. And even at the time, like when I saw this movie, not in the theater, but I saw it in 1995 as soon as it was available to rent, and even then, I was like, this is the most unrealistic nonsense ever. But it kind of didn't matter, because you just kind of like, your mind at the time and even now, you just kind of went along with it. Your suspension, your disbelief was suspended, right? And that is, I think, one of the best parts of Hackers, is that it is a bit of this like science fiction, roller coaster that you just have to like put your seatbelt on and kind of just like experience it.
The other ways that stuff is represented in the film, we do kind of get like a version of cyberspace. I think it's only really shown in relation to the Gibson supercomputer.
The Gibson.
Yes. Yeah. Where it's the second film in the last few months where I've had a Penn Jillette jump scare as well.
Hell yeah.
In the film.
Oh, he's awesome in this
I know,
movie.
I love Penn Jillette, but when you're not expecting to see him and he pops up, it's like, oh, that's Penn Jillette. It's like,
totally.
I had the other one was Marty Supreme, where he kind of just comes out of nowhere as well.
Yeah.
That is probably more of some of the more unrealistic kind of computing stuff in it, but it's interesting. It's visually interesting. I mean, there's the giant screen that Penn Jillette sat at with password God. Like, I love the idea that a lot of what seems to happen in terms of hacking in this film is just guessing passwords. Like, it's just like,
and not even like running scripts, just first try, 3 characters, done.
And that scene has like these big, they almost look like buildings, and the camera pans around and there's lights, Tron-esque lights going everywhere. But one of the interesting things I saw when I was doing my very limited research on Wikipedia about this film is that was mainly practical. Like, they didn't actually use any computer generated imagery for that. It was rotoscoping, it was miniatures with controlled cameras, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, like acrylic looking little buildings. Yeah, it does look great. It's goofy as hell, but yeah, it works.
They clearly reuse those buildings to actually represent the kernel as well. They keep talking about the kernel, the physical computer in that space.
Exactly.
Around this time as well, I mean, again, I'm not going to recount the entire plot because we'll be here all day, but we meet some of the other characters in the film. So we've got a serial killer who's played by Matthew Lillard, who, man, he had a run in the 90s of like teen movies, from Scream and She's All That, and stuff like that. We also meet who seems to be a younger member of the crew, Jesse Bradford, played by Joey Pardella. Again, he's massively associated with, well, I guess it's technically 2000s, but he's the kind of love interest in Bring It On.
Yep.
And we also meet Ramon, who is, I thought, an interesting character, because although they don't go down this, he's quite camp. And I thought, and I'm not kind of implying anything about the character sexuality, but all of these guys are very kind of they're not fitting into archetypes. They're dressing very strangely. I mean, we have one scene where Angelina Jolie's character is wearing pretty much just a Devil's jersey, which might be one of the reasons you like this film so much. I think
it's a cool moment for New Jersey Devil fans for sure.
We also, and like we meet another character as well called Lord Nikon, played by Lawrence Mason. But the character I wanted to get to is Fisher Stevens' bad guy, the Plague. Who is Fisher Stevens is an interesting actor. He's not necessarily a good or nice person by all accounts, but he definitely commands some presence in this film as being not at all threatening, but also seeming one step ahead every time in a way that's quite good for a villain, I think.
Yeah. This is a good point, right? Because he's like the most unintimidating person that you could possibly choose as like the hacker villain. But, I guess I'd really never like unpacked the sort of thing. Like he's such a dork in this movie where you're like, I'm not scared of him at all.
Yeah.
Like and there's a point where he like takes a bat to like a radio and you're like, oh, okay, buddy, who cares? You destroyed a radio. Like, it's weird that he is the villain.
Yeah.
I guess they couldn't make someone like Jockey, right? Because that kind of would have, conflicted with like the energy that they seem to kind of be going in. But yeah, he's just this like hyper intelligent criminal, a goofy criminal, I guess, is like the best way to describe it.
It's interesting that they needed a villain as well. Like, it's not just the establishment; it is one of their own, kind of.
And he himself, it's a good point. He himself is very anti-establishment, right?
Yeah.
But he's basically like contracted as like the head of security for the Ellingson Mineral Company, and he has to like deal with the idea that like, oh, I'm working for this big corporation that is looking for oil. It's like it's just the 8 worst things you could possibly represent.
Really, his goal would be like, that's the good guy's goal. He's stealing money off the oil company and getting rid of all their boats. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, he's making them all like, he's sending them on wild goose chases, right? He designs the virus, right? Like, he's doing all that, and he's stealing from them. In a way, he's, I guess, possibly a hero, but the thing that he's doing is that he's framing these kids for what he's doing.
But that's one thing where I think the plot, in terms of like I said about like probably rewrites and editing and stuff, like if Joey, the character of Joey who hacks into the Gibson in the first place, hadn't done that, what was his idea then? Like,
exactly.
Or maybe he was setting a trap by making the password so simple. Maybe that was part of the thing, or maybe I'm ascribing too much.
No, you're exactly right. And again, while we collectively all suspend our disbelief, I go down the rabbit hole all the time of like, wait a minute, how could this have happened? Right? Like, how could, like, if his entire goal was to frame hackers, how did he, like, what was he going to do? Just wait for the hacker to come on in? Like, was it, he's just waiting for this to happen? It would have been interesting if he somehow incepted Joey to do the hack.
Well, and there is kind of something that happens in the plot, like a B plot later on. There's like a challenge, a hacker challenge between Kate and Dade, which, if that had been set up as like, we're looking for hackers, and then the end thing was to get into the system and to prove your worth, and then you're like, oh shit, what have I done?
Exactly.
But yeah, there's armchair rewriting. I love this cast of characters, though. They're all quite interesting and quirky. Weird kind of relationship between Fisher Stevens, the Plague, as the ultimate villain, with Wendell Pierce, who plays the Secret Service agent, who is actually tasked with finding these criminals. It's almost like they're in cahoots at one point, but they're kind of not. It's a little bit unclear until the end, when he actually arrests Fisher Stevens on the plane.
Right, when he's trying to escape.
Yeah, waiting until the plane has already taken off to towards Barbados or the Bahamas, wherever it was going, before arresting him, which is...
Couldn't catch him at the terminal?
Yeah, you had to get on. You had to get on. Maybe they're planning a thing. but you know, some great little scenes with Wendell Pierce as well, where they're hacking to kind of make his life a bit harsher. Some of it hasn't aged that well, with there's some like allusions to transvestites and stuff like that. But it's just some like, you know, of its time quirks really. One of the kind of the main hack scenes in the movie, though, I found interesting as well in terms of it's more realistic for like modern hacking because there's social engineering involved.
Mhm.
There's physical things that happen, like physical little devices that intercept things on phone lines. And I actually thought that kind of end sequence where, you know, hackers assemble, like Avengers assemble, was a little bit more realistic in a way. But again, it does kind of boil down to people tapping furiously, like fighting through code. But Dade loses. Dade gets kicked out by the plague, and it actually falls on Joey to kind of prove himself as like the underdog out of this group,
Right.
which again is a bit of a subversion of what you might expect from a typical plot as well. You know what's funny is that as I watched this film, I kind of was half enjoying it, kind of understanding it was very of its time and stuff. Now I'm thinking back on it, discussing it with you, I'm kind of like, I actually quite like this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think it overachieves in an incredible way. And again, obviously, it speaks to our ish generation in a way that very few films do, because I do think it permeates a subculture that if you were in the right place in the right time, this is just the most comfort food thing you could possibly experience. And I also think a lot of people, especially I did, I watched this and I aspired to be as cool as the people were portrayed in this film. And I think it like I think it also like sort of presents a sort of subculture, right? Or like a thing that you just wanted to be a part of. Because everything is like very positive, right? Like the way, you know, the kind of their community is presented for the most part is fairly positive. Like everyone has this individual sort of like lifestyle and expression that is like, you know, no one is ever really kind of like going after each other for the way they look or anything like that. It is like this like almost kind of progressively inclusive kind of thing, which I always thought was like super cool.
Well, they specifically say that, don't you? You're not defined by any of that stuff. You're now just your screen name. You're like that kind of anonymity of what they're doing. Although saying that, they all just then meet up at Cyberdelia.
Oh, Cyberdelia,
and Grand Central.
Yeah.
Cyberdelia, I know we've got to wrap up now because you've got to get up, but I just wanted to say about Cyberdelia, again, I did not expect to see a sort of proto version of Wipeout. The video game in that film. Yeah, so I looked into that because it's clearly not Wipeout, but it has the vehicles from Wipeout, but seems to play very differently and is also of much higher fidelity than the PlayStation could have done. And yeah, it's just like the Psygnosis were contracted to create it. They show the PlayStation logo. I mean, I don't think was the PlayStation even out yet. I don't think it was. I think it was about to come out, or it had just come out. I think maybe.
Yeah, maybe it was 94 that it came out.
It came out in 94 in Japan. Yeah, but I mean in the States.
Right. No, you're right. It like I think it did. I don't know if this was, you know, maybe another kind of like sort of play, but it certainly did like do a bit of advertising in the way of PlayStation, not really knocking you over the head with it as like maybe something like the Wizard did for Nintendo, but yeah, there was that element of it too that I found to be kind of interesting and really like, oh wow, this movie's got everything. This movie's got the future of games too. What doesn't it have?
So this is interesting. It came out 1 week after the PlayStation was released in the States.
That's incredible.
And about 2 weeks before Wipeout came out.
That's incredible. So I almost refuse to believe that's just coincidence.
There was they do show the logo as well. They show, even though he's playing on double joysticks, it does show the logo for that. Because I remember thinking, that looks like Wipeout vehicle, and then I see the logo, and I'm like, yeah. Another very Wipeout-esque thing about this film that again, the soundtrack of this film,
excellent,
it is like a Wipeout soundtrack. It's stuff like Orbital, Prodigy, and it kind of is has me, when I hear a soundtrack like that, it's not even necessarily music that I listen to, but it brings me back to the 90s in a way that these days just makes me feel a little bit sad. Like, we kind of peaked in the 90s, I think, as a society. Like, it's like in The Matrix, they say that they kept trying different time periods, but they kept coming back to the turn of the century because that was when humanity peaked. And yes, true words have not been spoken.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all consider those things through rose-colored lenses, right? Because we we're just animals of habit, right? We are creatures of habit. We kind of like we put certain nostalgic periods in our life on a pedestal, and we wax poetic about them. And for us, the Hackers represents that to a T, maybe even a little before. But I do think this movie does do a good job at kind of putting on display like all of those things. And yeah, I mean, I can't say that like comparing, the world that Hackers portrays in 1995 compared to today, like, yeah, I'd have to think long and hard about which I would probably prefer. Like I don't have the answer on the tip of my tongue.
Right. I don't think there's anything else more that we can say about Hackers today. Sort of turn around from the mic. Jeff, well, is there anything else? Is there any other final thoughts on the film, actually? I should ask.
No, I just, I just absolutely adore this film. It is the one thing that I remember in the early 2000s when I used to, have cable TV. Like if this thing popped up on a channel, I could not move away from it. There's something so intoxicating about it that I know because of the sort of second and third life that this film has had in the 30 years since its release. I know that this movie did something special to a lot of people of a similar kind of age range, and I doing the show has made me so happy to just be able to talk about it again in a more kind of like, deeper and sort of substantial way. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to dive back into it. It's in a class by itself, that's for sure.
I kind of want to seek out some of the other, like rewatch the net and watch some more. Was it the Whoopi Goldberg one, Jumping Jack Flash or something? I had some.
Oh, I've never seen that one, but the net is interesting. The net probably tries to thread the needle of like even being more realistic. That was what, like 97, 98, something like that?
Yeah.
And it is certainly slower, certainly less, certainly, just a bit more boring, where Hackers wanted to be this punk rock kind of thing. And the net is sort of like, no, this is how it's really going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does the net exist if Hackers never released to mediocrity and a bit of success? I don't know. I want to say the net was also like a novel before it came out, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Probably, yeah. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. Jeff, thanks so much for joining me today. Is there anything you want to plug? I know you can sign up for Giant Bomb Premium at giantbomb.com/join. One of the things that we didn't touch on today is Jeff has also created his own webcomic series called What Lies Below the Lilies, written by Sarah Dealey, which you can get. You can see on belowthelilies.com. So I've kind of done your plugging for you to a certain extent. Is there anything else that you want to plug, Jeff?
No, I appreciate you shouting that out. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, Giant Bomb is very much tethered to the, symbiotic relationship we have with our supporters. So if that is a thing you're interested in doing, it means the world. It keeps us going. And without it, we'd have to, look somewhere else. So appreciate all the support and all the help. And thank you, Michael.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff. We'll leave it there. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you.